Hello, and thank you for tuning in. This is the Billings Gazette Stories of Honor. I am Daryl Ehrlich, and today I am joined in studio with Mark Wandle. And I am so happy that he's here and we get to share his story. So, Mark, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit. I always start at the same. Tell me your background. Tell me about your life story. Where did you come from, and how did you get involved in the Army?
I ended up growing up in Baker, Montana
Okay.
for up until I graduated, and then I went on to Dickinson State
Okay.
over in Dickinson, and primarily to try to do some athletics in that line and do some different things. So my first year in at college,
Hmm.
I did the normal route, and I'd always thought about military service. My father served in the Air Force, had a grandpa who served in the Army back post World War II, in between World War II and Korea. So it was kind of there. But ended up being an item of just wanted to challenge one summer and didn't know what I was going to do. So in March of 1989, I decided to sign up on a whim. I had a battle buddy a friend at that time who eventually was my battle buddy who wanted to join. And it's like, oh, I got nothing planned. Why don't I sign up? And so went down, signed up basically in about an hour and a half. And then I contacted my mom and dad back here. They're living in Billings. And hadn't communicated with them on my intentions. Told my mom what I was going to do, and I'd always recommend to everybody and talk to mom or talk to your wife, talk
Right.
to your loved ones before you jump into something like that. But yeah,
Were they worried?
I think moms always worry.
Yeah.
Dads worry also, but moms probably express it a little bit more at
Yeah.
the time. I think worried, but we were in kind of a transition period to where there wasn't. It was a peacetime opportunity. And for me, part of it was love of country, but also to be honest, part of it was joining up with the Guard. They had great college payment benefits and GI Bill, and coming from a family that didn't have some of those other affordabilities in life. Dad was a hard worker, but was a truck driver. Mom worked as a cook in Baker at a restaurant, but was more of a stay home mom. So um, to be able to pay for college was a driving force of mine.
Yeah.
And so I signed up and ended up spending 20 years.
20 years in the Guard.
20 years in the Guard and then some deployments inside of there.
Okay.
Most of those opportunities were a little bit different. I was lucky enough to be able to go to Italy. That was a great tour. I also did an opportunity to go to Korea, South Korea, and outside of Camp Red Cloud, which is around Seoul. That was a good opportunity. Don't know if I prefer to go back to Camp Red Cloud again if I had a choice. Nogales,
Okay.
down on border security towards the end of my career, and in Germany, and then had and served in Iraq from 2003 to 2005 on the regular side.
Did you in '89? Because I
Mhm.
was I'm just a little younger than you, although you've aged better. I will say that. Did the thought of being called up in war, because there was no real war. In fact, communism was just beginning to fall. So
Yeah.
was that a concern for you, or was that even on your radar?
It came up on the radar real quick. I had the great fortune to play football at Dickinson and wrestle. And what ended up happening was we ended up having Desert Storm
Yeah.
come around. And being in North Dakota, primarily when I joined up as a combat engineer, so we put in minefields and built bridges. We were, assault and obstacle is what we always called our heavy equipment side later on. But that was our main focus when I went to basic. And coming out of there, they needed a lot of water purification. So there was always the conversation of being called up and getting the opportunity to serve the country. At that point, being in for about a year and a half and towards the end of my athletic career, there were a lot of anxious moments thinking, okay, if I get called up now, what happens with football? It's selfish as that sounds now to me,
Yeah.
football and some of those things. So, when you're 20, 21, there's a lot of different things going through your head. Didn't get called up at that opportunity. And then things settled out uh, for a while, and we did a lot of training, just trying to transition into what we were going to be down the line. As a combat engineer, I started off, like I said, doing minefields and bridges. Eventually, that turned into more of a mechanized infantry type opportunity as a combat engineer, until the eventual thing of what we ended up being, which was, we call ourselves trailblazers, but basically looking for IEDs
Right.
and writing some of those TTPs and things along those lines when we were deployed. So the transition of it was fluid, I guess.
Right.
The great thing about the military is we're very stuck in protocols and standards, but you have to adapt and change constantly to improve your situation or your survivability, I guess, or effectiveness. So depending upon what strand you're in, where you're at the time.
Yeah. Did your father have a different reaction to you joining than your mother because he had been in the Air Force? He'd been.
Not that I remember, other than proud of you doing that. I also, when my parents moved to Billings my senior year, so I lucked out and ended up staying with the family in Baker. I wanted to finish up going to school at Baker. Yeah, where I'd been my whole life. And so my family moved, so that was a little bit of a transition that probably gave me a little bit more of, I don't want to say the lone wolf type thing, but I always like the quote, the strength of the pack is the wolf and the strength of the wolf is the pack. So I had a lot of transitions that way, but the family that I stayed with also had a gentleman, Alvin Croy, who served. And so, I think there's more of a quiet reflection and support that way. Yep. Is the way I remember my dad having that and several others, and up until 2003 and really 2001 when things transitioned for us militarily and as a country. That's when probably a little bit more of the conversations at that point.
Yeah. Did you think that when you joined in '89? Did you think you would have a 20-year career in it?
No, I did not.
No. Did you think? How long did you think were you going to do it just as long as it paid the bills for college and that, or what was your take me back to your thinking?
Yeah, I signed up, and so after the first 6 years, I didn't really know what I wanted to do still. Life choices, life standards, lifestyle was not probably a great outlier for me at 25. At 26, similar to maybe some other guys who serve in the military or ladies. And so trying to figure out some things that way, really thought maybe I'd get out at the end of the 6 years and then you go 2 on the other side, so you do 6 and 2. And ended up fortunately having a really good squad leader at that point that transitioned in and ended up, I guess, kind of respecting him. He was a Vietnam vet. And so I have a great admiration for Vietnam vets. I feel we haven't done enough, and that's why some of the stories I've seen you do, I'm intrigued by the Vietnam veterans and World War II veterans and Korean veterans and just veterans and families in general now as I transition. So about probably my 6th to 8th year, kind of a mental transition to where I probably started applying myself a little bit more, trying to put myself in better situations mentally, militarily, and lifestyle-wise, although still working on that too.
We all are.
And so what ended up happening was ended up doing that, and then you get to 12 years. Mm-hmm. So it's another 6-year commitment. And so, or you can do a 3-year reenlistment. So did the 3, then I'm going, okay, I'm at 9. Well, why not? Well, let's see where it goes. And so after that initial sign up, and then once 2001 hit, as I'll tell students, I'll do presentations about once a year in a history class, and maybe to some others if they ask. And so what ends up happening is that mentally it's like, okay, now, being a pretty competitive individual, okay, now the opportunity's here. What are you going to do with it? Where do you want to go? What are the challenges going to be ahead of you? And so now it's, I always just say, now I get to get in the game. Not that war is a game, but that's the mentality. And like I said, after about a month of being in Iraq in 2004, hitting February, March, I'm like, hey, check the boxes. I've done what I need to do now. I can go back home anytime. Those guys who serve and those ladies who serve and their families and the impact on them is tremendous. And so that really became kind of a driving force then, and then was really afforded some good opportunities. I was in Dickinson almost my whole career. I was in Williston, North Dakota for just a little bit, and then we ended up getting deployed. And so I went from being an E3 in a unit to retiring as the first sergeant in the same unit over 20 years. And some of the questions I usually get asked, and so I'll just jump to that, not mean to step on your toes, is I moved out here to Montana, out to Huntley Project area in Warden in 1999. I retired 10 years later. And so I'd travel back once or twice a month back to Dickinson for my drill or to be with who I consider my guys. Great people in Dickinson, love the community. It's almost a second home. And so getting that camaraderie, the connection with those guys, there were times where I was driving back 2 times a month and never really saw the impact. For me, it was easy. I'd always done it for my wife and her support, and I'm blessed to have a very supportive wife that way, but didn't realize the impact it can take on families because you get kind of driven, you start getting that focus and that I guess plan of action that you want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have your family there, while sometimes the outliers, your other family who's just as important, you just start getting that focus. I think I know for myself that's something I got to keep on trying to improve on. Is there's a lot of moving parts to your whole life.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get so focused on a goal you forget the real important parts. So
yeah. Why did you choose to be an educator yourself?
I was blessed to grow up in Baker.
Okay.
And at Dickinson State, and just had some remarkable people around me as teachers and educators. And I think that the job itself is, and I'm sure everybody thinks this is their job. I think education is one of the most misunderstood and sometimes critiqued, but one of the most powerful things somebody can be. I think military is the same way. I also am a little biased towards farmers. So I think, but I'm pretty sure that, media people probably go, oh man, everybody does an important job.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the military's taught me probably more than anything, is everybody has a vital role. And so you always think of the frontline guys or us guys who are out there, like I used to say to our guys looking for IEDs, and we find one. Great, we found one. There's two things that can happen. Either it detonates or we get EOD. And well, now you need EOD. You still need service and support in different areas. So it's the whole teamwork concept. And that's what I really like about education and coaching and those things, is the teamwork concept of everything. Team to me, I guess that's the military, and growing up in Baker, team was it's just a vital expectation in life. You can't survive on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, so once again, though the pack is the wolf is the pack.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So what about military fits so well? Because it's one thing to serve. I talked to a lot of guys who were drafted and they did that, and it worked out for them, and they enjoyed it, they appreciated it. But to actually serve and keep re-upping for that amount of time. What about it just kind of appealed or made sense to you?
The camaraderie, working as part of a team still. I mean, I come back to that a lot in my life, it seems, but it was the challenges that can come up, which are great, but you get to see an end state to it. So if you're putting in for an easy reference would be if we go off to a site and we'd be for opposition forces for the Guard, you get to pretend you're the enemy. So putting in obstacles and be able to get that accomplished, and seeing if you can route people the way you want, or if you can accomplish missions that people think are going to be tough, then you have some success and you have some positive feelings about that. So yeah, I just think the team side of it was really part of it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Did your perspective when we went in the first Gulf War? I want to take. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back and I want to hit on a couple of things. In the first Gulf War, okay, so you joined and communism is falling, but not long after we're in the first Gulf War. Does that concern you as a young man? Does the first Gulf War?
Other than selfishly worrying about if I was going to end up losing the opportunity to be eligible to play in some football games?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
If I didn't have that at that point in my life, I didn't have any concerns about being deployed, other than I was hoping it would wait a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And then let's go to September 11th, 2001. Mm-hmm. Where were you and what changed for you and what did you think?
Most of us have those moments, and being a history teacher, you understand, the connectedness to, when President Kennedy and individuals along those lines are the first man on the moon, the step, and all those. For me, that one's still vivid. It's very easy because I had actually re-upped that year, and at the time was dating my future wife, and said, I'll sign up. Nothing's ever going to happen, was my quote to her. And to my mom as well, because they're both, maybe it's time. You get to 12 years, 9 years, let's see where we are. So in 2011, it had been 12 years, or in 2001 on 9/11. And so I was over in the weight room with a young man, got done, and I remember hearing on the radio listen to local radio station that a plane had hit the towers. I'm thinking, oh, how bad a pilot do you have to be, was my first thought. So go back over to my apartment and change, get ready for the school day, come walk in at about 7:30 that morning, and a great lady that was out at Huntley Project, Kelly Fowling, was our secretary, and come walk up the front door, and her and the principal, Doug Vander Penderson, are going, what are you doing? What's happening with you? I'm going, I'm coming to work. And that's when I finally knew. They said, you need to come in and look at the TV.
Right.
And then, so that whole morning ended up watching that in classes. Remember getting a call from both my future wives saying, you said nothing would happen. I was wrong, and so you go through those type of things.
How did you respond to that?
Just being told that nothing was going to happen.
Yeah, and do you say, and then she said, you said nothing was going to happen.
Yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah.
It's pretty matter of fact at that point. There were bigger things already clicking in my head and seeing where we were going to be and what was going to happen. And then trying to stay calm, even though you have a lot of nervousness, anxiousness, scared, concerned, pissed, all those emotions going through you. And then going and doing assembly in the high school, gym that afternoon. And so that whole day just seemed after that first couple hours, okay, what's going to go on? And then, then trying to go back to trying to focus on your regular job. And then being part of the Guard is a blessing. It's really nice. We go and do our stuff for a weekend or 2 times a month and a little bit longer. We found out once you start getting deployed or getting ramped up for deployment, your timelines get stretched. You're over there more often. And then the impacts of that can happen a lot on families. And so the best thing about being part of the Guard is everybody so well. My buddies and friends and everybody else on those lines, you get to know their families, you get to know their kids, and I'm sure it's the same in the regular Army. I don't know that standard really. I've talked to guys I know who are in the regular Army about that, but I think there's a close-knitness to the community in those areas. When I was in North Dakota, Mott, North Dakota, and Hettinger, North Dakota, and all these little towns that I had known and been to and different things, you see the impact of that. And so then when you get deployed, that's great. And it's also difficult when you have tragedies or you have casualties or you have issues and those things. And so all those things ramped up into it after 9/11 became a lot more, I guess I don't want to say I became more appreciative of what everybody had always done. I'd always had a great appreciation. But after that date and after that event and then being deployed, I often reference military families. I was blessed. I have a very supportive wife, but I didn't have any children at the time I was deployed. Got married later in life, which is probably good in a lot of ways, blessed that way. But, getting deployed when it's just you and your wife, as bad as it sounds, you don't have those little ones to think about. My buddies and my friends and my fellow soldiers who have to do that even now today, I'm just like, holy cow. The impact on them and their families is, it's impressive.
Yeah. Did you at that moment, when did you know, was it your order for deployment, or could you read the handwriting on the wall? Did you know you were going to have to go to Iraq, Afghanistan, somewhere like that?
Yeah, becoming more aware of it probably, I'd say almost immediately, because we were going to end up getting the opportunity to be a sapper. So in an engineer area, it's a special group that's similar to maybe some of the other, I don't want to say special forces, because some of those, I listen to podcasts all the time of guys. I'm listening to one right now when I was driving in today, and it's not quite that, but we were going to end up being we were going to try to spin up a sapper group, and I was going to get a chance to lead that in North Dakota. And what ended up happening then is that became non-existent. We were going to focus on this other area and went back to our other transitions and our other job opportunities. And so it was pretty quick after that you knew, if not today, it's going to be at some point in the next 5 years, you're going to get deployed. Knowing what your job was going to be was a little bit, we didn't know. And so we had heavy equipment in our company out of Dickinson. And as I said, we had transitioned from, like I said, first couple of years putting in minefields and putting in bridges. And now we're running heavy equipment, both for horizontal construction. And then there were some of us who were more of the mechanized guys who still did obstacles, putting in triple standard concertina fences, running, bridge crossing items for a mission and things along those lines. So that kind of transition that way.
Was it, in the first Gulf War, we were going after an enemy. Iraq had invaded Kuwait. It was still kind of a traditional state versus state battle. After 9/11, our enemy became a little less defined. Was that hard going to places where you were fighting insurgents and you were fighting people who it wasn't necessarily a army structured like our army, which had a commander in chief and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Did warfare change, and how did you as a trained soldier adapt to that?
Yeah, it's changed consistently for us on a day-to-day basis. We were right outside of Baghdad. So we were from Taji, which was an air base north of Baghdad, and then eventually we ended up more by Adujal or Balad, Iraq, which was there's Bakuba and Samara. So we would basically our area of operation was going from that location to certain grid lines and looking for IEDs during the day, and if we found them, calling an EOD or trying to figure out how to get rid of them in another form, way, shape. And then so going through that transition, people can be very friendly to you. And then at night, if you're on night operations, you see IEDs go off or you get blown up or different things along those lines. You know that it's probably somebody you met. And so that transition of, just listen to the podcast today, the enemy gets to fight when they want to fight. And so you're always anxious and ready to go and looking and being alert. And so try not to be complacent with that to where you just start getting numbed by, for us, we'd be driving at a very slow rate of speed. And for a long time, we didn't have up armored vehicles. We didn't have the Buffaloes and the Meerkats and the Huskies and the MRAPs. We had 5-ton dump trucks that we'd haul dirt in different areas with boxes filled up with dirt and dirt on the bottom. And us just looking over the sides, driving down the road in 5 tons, looking for IEDs when we first started. Looking back on it now, as I've told people, and when I talk to our Vietnam vets and different guys at my VFW unit out there, and I've done presentations to them or the Legion, they think we're nuts. It's like, well, the great thing about the military is you do what you can with what you have, the time that you have it. You can complain about all you want, but it's like I used to tell people, I don't think complaining about the heat's going to lower the heat. So you got to figure out how to deal with it, and we move on and get the mission done. And so when we're doing those things, slowly you start to improve your areas or your operation standards. And so, everything from taking metal, fortunately a bunch of farm boys and farm girls from North Dakota, Montana, Colorado, and some engineers and electricians and all these different people in a guard unit, they bring in all these other background things that they have. And so making doors out of 1/4-inch steel to make yourself a little up armored door. Eventually we did get some of that other equipment, which was a blessing because then we started figuring out how lucky really a lot of us were.
Yeah.
We didn't have some of the things and some of the tools and equipment. So bought spotting scopes from Cabela's out of our pocket because it at least would give you a chance to be a little further away from looking at something. Because primarily what we were looking for were wires that would go off in the ditches at that time. And so we were right on the front end of the IED. IEDs were happening, but we were kind of the first group that was really starting to figure out how to deal with them. We'd fallen in right on a group at the end. And so trying to build the tactics and the procedures and the analysis of what was going on and looking at things really had to change. Mm-hmm. And so all those benefits to us around us were because we tried to also build good relationships with the people in the communities. One of the things we were very good about is we tried to always put on our doors our North Dakota unit crest, the shield with the three arrows to represent the tribes. And so we tried to put that on everything so that they knew who we were. And we tried to treat people with respect. And that sounds odd that in war, I do think you need to have still respect for human life and others and those things. But when it's time when you got to bring it, you got to bring it too. And so trying to balance all those emotions and those different things, the fear, the adrenaline, the anxiousness, and the love of others really is a driving force for everybody. And for us, it was really important that we tried to make sure that we were trying to treat people as well as we could while still protecting ourselves and covering our back.
Yeah. Was it? No, I just imagine. We've heard about IEDs,
Mm-hmm.
improvised explosive devices, and it sounds nerve wracking that you can just be. And I know there were, they called them in Vietnam booby traps and things. I mean, so we've had those, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems like something that people who grew up. I grew up in Montana and have been blessed to live in great places, but nowhere where there's an improvised explosive device such that if you're walking along or driving along, something could kill you. Is that nerve wracking to have to do that? That just seems like you were on the front lines of what would be thinking that everything here could kill me.
Yeah, I don't want to say you get used to it, but you get used to it.
Right?
The one thing I think that was really good for us that made you not want to be complacent.
Right.
For us, when we first started out on it looking for them, they changed. It was just kind of buried on the side of the road, so it was easy to see. Eventually, we would try to burn all the trash because people would hide them in trash, and so we started just burning the ditches to get rid of the trash. Well, then they started putting them even in animals. They would place it inside a dead animal along those lines because there's roadkill there just like we have here. And so when you're trying to burn stuff, there would have to be that they started the enemy adapts too, and we'd have to adapt. So where you turn around on the line, you don't always take the same path. If you keep doing that, at some point they're smart enough to know they turn at that line every day. That's where we're setting one. They're going to turn. They're not going to be paying attention. This is where they pull off to have their breaks. So you're constantly trying to change what you're doing with trying to keep the same standards, and then also realizing that some things are really important to follow, and some things, a uniform. As I've tried to tell people, I'm not a rule breaker, but I get written up several times because of not wearing a top inside some of our vehicles. Because when we're inside these large vehicles, I go, our team, you see a buffalo coming down the road. I don't know if you know what a buffalo is.
No,
It's
I
a
don't.
great big MRAP that's, that's all the windows. It's the size of, it's bigger than a bulldozer. And it's got an extension arm that can help you scoop and another. So if you find an ID, so what we do eventually is we take what we call a Husky or Meerkat, which is like a little dune buggy with mine detectors, and you drive up. If you saw something, you'd spray it with the little spray paint. So you drive over the IED, you'd spray it, and then you'd come off. And then the buffalo would go up and try to dig, or we'd try to see what's going on. And if it blew up, your survivability rate's great. It's very good. You're probably going to get a concussion. People are going to get hurt, but along those lines, but you hope that it's at least going to save lives that way. And it's better than being on the ground walking. And so as you look for those things, you're always aware of that. But some of the tactics start changing. They blow up one and then they wait for the person to get out because we try to mark the hole and look for secondary and then hit with the secondary. And so, is it nerve-wracking? Yeah. But you also know it's got to get done. You asked me for a picture. I didn't bring a picture. I really don't have a picture of myself.
Sure.
I have lots of pictures with my troops.
Yeah.
But one of the things that probably I think I have a thing that was given to our unit, and we actually ended up getting two of them for some reason. The same copy came to the unit. So when I retired, the guys gave it to me. It is a unit valorous unit award citation for our battalion, which was 141. We were always Delta 164. We were Delta, and we ended up getting absorbed. And as a guard, you're attached to others. So we got attached with the Big Red One, and with a different unit out of North Dakota even. But we ended up getting that award, and I think, and I don't want to misquote, I know it was more than 300. We found more than 300 IEDs as a battalion in a year and a half. So,
Wow.
and some of those, as I tell students, some of those found us. The things that are difficult to still comprehend is there's a young man, Cody Wentz, who was killed on November 4th of 2004. And, for Cody, I kind of knew him. I knew him very well. He was killed by Balad. His driver, Specialist Sorensen, ended up losing his leg. His first sergeant, which is Wayne Melberg, all those guys. So I know them very well. They were in the same little group with us. There's about 40 of us in this one area. So to lose somebody like that and to know the sacrifice he made, it impacted us a ton. I'd like to say that we always carried ourselves with class and composure, but for about 2-3 days there, we didn't do anything that was horrendous, but at that point we started taking down the trees in the median. Up to that point we'd left them, and an IED had been left by a tree, and that's what ended up killing Cody. And so we ended up, at that point, we're starting to take down the trees. And we tried to not do that for a long time. And so just the mental switch of what you're asking before, of knowing who the enemy is, you go through all this moment and you're trying to really treat everybody that way. It was a learning lesson. You can be as nice as you want. There's still evil. Yeah, there's still evil out there, and they're there to get you.
How do you, when you lose someone that you worked alongside and you know personally,
Mm-hmm.
how do you go on the next day?
Yeah, one of the things, and if you talk to my guys who served with me, I was a platoon sergeant at the time, but I knew very well the first platoon couldn't go out right then after losing somebody that's right in their unit. I didn't think so, and so we took their missions, which was not a popular choice probably
Right.
at that point with some of my own troops, but I thought it was the right thing to do. Um, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I think it's just part of the duty and you just got to go on. You got to get your mission done.
Yeah.
And there's things to get done, and trying to step up and help, I thought was really important at that time. And then trying to build a rotation to where you can take care of your own troops. There are plenty of people I had to pull off missions that I cared and liked about, and that's one of the things. One of the items that I've talked about with people when they ask me is I didn't make anybody go on a mission on their kids' birthdays or their anniversaries or Christmas Day of 2004, still one where we should have had 2 or 3 guys, and they got away because I made a determination to only take all of us single guys on the road, and we didn't have enough. We left one vehicle back, and I'm pretty sure if we would have had that other vehicle, we would have been able to capture 3 guys and held them accountable, but hopefully they got held accountable later on.
Yeah. It's one thing, and you know this in education, it's one thing to be individually responsible, but when you're a platoon sergeant, when you're a leader, you're responsible for other people. How does that work? Is that more stress and more nerve-wracking?
It is. When you know everybody so well also. It is because, like I said, I made determinations on missions at times with their own personal interest involved in it. Like I said, you're not going out today, it's your daughter's birthday, leaving you back. Even though they might be, and you got to balance some because there were times, like I've tried to tell people, in the end of March to early April of 2004, we did lots of nighttime missions, and it was pretty intense 7 days. And so guys start to go, hey, I've been on 4 missions, getting back in the vehicle, we're going again. And so trying to balance those type of things with your own expectations can be a little difficult, similar to not the same as being a leader in any role. I think, bank presidents got to make decisions too. Principals and superintendents and teachers have to make those decisions. But you also don't have the finality of what the decision may mean in that event, in that course. But mission's got to get done, and it's for the greater good, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. And so, we always talk about, you have no greater love than laying your life on the line or somebody who's done that. And that's where, I talked about Cody, but Specialist Lynch or Sergeant Lynch from Shepherd, I reference him every year at our graduation ceremony. Started it when I became a principal, and I won't quit until I leave Huntley Project. It's great that we know of some of these great men and women who have sacrificed and given so much. But I don't mean disrespect to probably best known as Pat Tillman, and love reading stuff on Pat Tillman and reading books on him and listening to podcasts on these great individuals, many like him. Well, Cody Wentz is pretty important too. Sergeant Lynch is pretty important. Trevor Johnson from Colstrop is pretty important. There's people around this community who are pretty important too.
Yep.
If their families have Andrew Pearson,
Yep.
They've also sacrificed their lives. So I think that's really the thing that we try to carry on, or I guess I try to still think about and represent, try to get a little better each day, because I've been afforded an opportunity to where, don't want to say I'm living on borrowed time, but I know I'm been pretty fortunate through a couple things.
Yeah.
And so, and that's been good.
What is a kid from Montana, North Dakota? I'll let you claim dual.
I'll probably claim both too.
Yeah. What does a kid from Montana and North Dakota think of Iraq? What does it look like to them? What do you remember just about the area and all of that? Because it seems very different.
It's, I'm still baffled. It's to stay there when it's, I can go on my phone now and not to say I don't know where it is, but I can tell you what the temperature is right now in Baghdad. I keep that on my phone at all times. So, there's a great teacher out at Huntley Project with me, Rick Dees, and we talk a lot about perspectives. And so if you think something's going bad, boy, it doesn't take long to change your perspective if you see things that people are going through. And so I try to really balance that a lot in whatever I'm doing. In my terms, my perspective was I can't believe somebody hasn't just said, I'm leaving. It's hot. It's 124 degrees today.
Right.
Honey, we're moving. And so, but where we were at, there's a lot of laterals. It's a lot like Warden in terms of the irrigation system.
Mm-hmm.
They flood irrigate. We don't do that out of Warden, but there's laterals, there's gates, there's channels to be able to farm off of the river. The river is their lifeblood, and so they do everything out of the river. And very important to have water. Everybody knows the importance of water. So when I looked at it that way, the railroad runs right by one side of the road we'd drive on, and they'd have the hill. It looked like railroad, wasn't necessarily railroad, but it looked like a railroad hill. If you drive out to Warden, it's the same type of area. Now, our community is a lot more beautiful. I'm
Right.
biased,
Right.
but a lot more trees. I know people are always surprised. We had, we called it Malaria Monday, where you had to take malaria pills every Monday because we were around a swamp. And people, there's swamps there. Yeah, there's swamps. We lived right in one basically around the area the whole time.
So that sounds great. Humid and
hot. Yeah, bolo effect. We get our be on the lookouts for different things. We're like, looking for individuals driving this vehicle. A lot of the vehicles are the same. In terms of how they drive, I have videos of different things that people had shared with me that I showed to students, and that how when we were there, I was there when they got a vote, and to see a woman walk 8 miles who might be 80 years old to be able to vote, that's awesome. That's part of history. That's pretty cool. But you also see right in the back of a vehicle the human condition of how some people are treated in Iraq compared to others is not great. And so to protect that, and that's where part of the IDs, like we said, we're protecting American troops. We're also protecting kids and women and children and others, because there isn't always an appreciation for life. When somebody's evil, there's no appreciation for life. Mm-hmm. And those individuals, and I know this is probably not a popular concept, and I try to tell that students all the time, there is evil, and people need to be protected from evil. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, these days, we have about 2% of our people serve.
Yeah.
And that's not a great number. I've done speeches on that. We have less than 1% are out there serving right now.
Yep.
And so our obligation to me should still be coming back, Montana, North Dakota kid. I hope it's the same for a New York kid or a Florida kid or anybody else. I would hope that we'd show more, not more appreciation. We get appreciated, I think, almost to an uncomfortable level for myself personally now, because I know what Vietnam veterans are treated like, or how it was going about those lines. And so when we get a chance to go through and look at those things, I think an appreciation for the sacrifices families and Vietnam veterans and everybody else has made, I would hope that would be a little more omnipresent with legislators and everybody else. And it's a lot of sound bites, but we're still same frustration points we've seen for 12, 15 years. But one of the things I think we've really improved, and I'm sorry I jump sometimes, my attention span's not great.
You're just fine. This is a good conversation.
One of the items that I think I've noticed that we do a lot better when we come back from Montana, North Dakota, we ended up getting back to Fort Carson and ended up getting back home. And we were basically put on leave for a couple months. And at the first point, your first couple days, like, oh, this is awesome. I got all this freedom now. For me, that was probably more nerve-wracking because I'd had an opportunity to be surrounded by 25 people I knew really well. And so once you're not around those individuals anymore, that gets tough. And I think what we do a better job of now, at least what I can see on the outside and what I thought we did better before I retired, was taking care of troops when they get home to make sure they stay in connection with others. We were isolated out. I was very blessed in a lot of ways, having great support at the school I was at. I came back and I think I took about, 5 days. Yeah, like I need to do something. This isn't good for me. So they were fortunate to let me come back, and I worked as a janitor and a substitute teacher, and I did also. They just kept me on. they brought me on and let me do that. So really fortunate to be in that community. And having that support by the school district, the school board, the superintendent at that time, Mr. Dave Mann, and some of our other staff. That was a blessing to me. But I know that other guys, it's the first thing everybody gets back, you get money, new motorcycles, new trucks, lots of time on your hands, and then some things you still want to talk out, and you're used to being able to visit with buddies at night, or fellow soldiers. And so I don't think we handle those transitions very well early on. It's a lot better now, and I still have some vital interest in vet affairs, not for me personally, but for some others. In terms of, I still have communicated with guys after I've been out. Some of my best buddies are, we're a phone call away. We don't talk all the time. We've got lives. We've got families. We're busy. But there's guys who'll call up and say, hey, need to talk. Okay, great. Fortunately, my wife's very supportive and understands. The phone usually rings at 1 a.m. It's usually not a great phone call. Yeah. I don't get those nearly as much as I did before, but you get a chance to talk to somebody, they're going through tough stuff. That's makes you feel better when you get to the other side of it.
Yeah. Do you think we're better at, because I know that a lot of, when I've done enough Vietnam interviews, that they kind of came home and then they put the uniform and anything else at the back of the closet and then tried to move on without really processing. Are we getting better at helping the vets process? Because what you see and what you do is intense, and there's no way I could understand it. I haven't been to Baghdad. I'm not a soldier, and I haven't been to a war zone. I could listen, but I don't think I'd be much good. Are we getting better at processing our vets back and helping them transition back into civilian life?
I think we're better. I don't think we're great yet.
What would be the one thing, if you could wave a magic wand, what would that, and make something better, what would you do?
Man, that is a great question. That's a great question. I think trying to make sure they have that. The biggest thing that we've talked about a little bit when I've talked to different groups is, pride. Male pride is not a great thing. Mm-hmm. And so, and living in Montana, we have a lot of pride. Yep. And so, when we see the suicide issues that are present in our state and the military and those things, is to offer that support, to try to make sure that people understand you're not weak when you ask for help. Even though I'm not great, I'm a bad person because I'm not a great representative of asking for help all the time. I think I'm getting a little better at it, but trying to build those relationships where you realize that you're not weak and you're not in those moments. And really, what happened in the military for us, we had a couple guys that admit, hey, need a little support, and lost some men to suicide. And so, as I tell people before, those are the harder days. Even you have somebody commit suicide, then what did I miss? Where are we at? What are we doing? How do we get better? And so and I know I've heard the 22 a day, so do your 22 push-ups in the morning and do those things. I wear red every Friday for remembering everybody deployed. All those little things are still present with me, even the point of not realizing which hat I had on today when I came in. I think that we're doing a better job of some of those things. I still think that to try to get people to understand that you're not weak when you ask for help is a hurdle that I don't know if a magic wand is there. It's going to take more time, and it's going to take people admitting they need some help at different points. Yeah. Because what we always try to say is, I didn't know a soldier yet that's come back and said, oh yeah, I've changed a little. I'll admit I think I changed a little. I don't know how much.
What do you think changed about you?
I know I have an appreciation for life more. I know I feel blessed to have 2 little girls and a wife who, like I said, boy, for the back burner for a while. My last 6-7 years of the military, it was, getting an opportunity to be a first sergeant and then wanting to do the job right. You can't be great at everything. You can only be good at everything. If you want to be great at something, you give up sacrifices. And so those sacrifices that she made, I really appreciate. I try to explain that to everybody, but I don't think people realize, even in the Guard, or the weekend warrior analogy that I used to get frustrated by, because my main goal was when we were on mission, we were going to be the most professional. We were going to be at the gate early. Now, in my regular life, I'm 5 to 10 minutes late consistently at different points in my life, and people make fun. Militarily, I was never late. It was a different mindset. So I was able to compartmentalize and shift and change roles. I don't have to change that role as much anymore. I'm becoming a little more comfortable with that. I don't know if that's good or bad, by the way.
Right? No,
But but having families, having my wife's support along those lines, when I did grad school and some other things, I remember when I retired, I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. But we pulled this off great. And I remember her one time just going, really, you think we pulled it off great? And at that point, I started realizing, it's probably, and I'm still not great at it. I got to get better still at relaxing and settling down and just letting things go. And I don't do that very well sometimes.
Mhm.
It's that I think that's one thing the military does is the people who succeed a lot in the military have a drive and they go, and everybody's an individual still, and that's the thing I think what the team side that I've really liked in the military is I'll get people to say, well, that's not very military of you. Well, how do you know? If you haven't served, I've been underneath some great leaders. I've had bad leaders too. I've had great teachers. I've had a couple teachers that I didn't think were as good.
Right.
And so, there's a Sergeant Major Remington. I talk about him a lot with people. I had in North Dakota, and just like he always, I remember having a conversation with him once when I was first going to become a first. I said, 10% of people in life, you never have to worry about. They are going to meet the expectation, drive past it. They're going to be awesome. There's 10%. You're not going to fix them. So why do you worry about that 10%? We focus so much on that bottom 10 when really they should just be out of the military. We should be done with them. And then you have 80% you kind of got to work with. And some of those, you kind of got to work with them all the time. And that's, I thought that was always very insightful as I've looked at other things in life, because his analysis and his introspection was so good that when I started thinking about it, I was like, yeah, everybody thinks they're in that top 10%.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Right.
And that's hard to hear sometimes. And so, but you got to treat them still with respect when you're talking, even that lower 10%. I think that's really important. But knowing where they're going to be and what they need to do and trying to explain that in a manner of fact that is respectful but still consistent is important. And when I look at some of the leaders I've had the guys who yelled and barked and kicked stuff, and they did great. Their teams and their tasks performed great. I've had others who would, be very quiet and very non-assuming on their roles, but their jobs got done again. I think probably the one compliment I've taken probably to heart more than anything is I went back and did a speech to the old unit I was with before. They were kind of in a transition. They've been activated twice or called up or been put on alert twice and then pulled back off of it, which I don't think people would really understand. When you finally get the mindset that you're going to go and it's time to go, you get into a different mindset. You're locked in. You're ready. Whether you be a reservist, a guard, a regular active person, now you get called and they say, well, hey, we're not going to need you now, so call back down. Well, you've already got your family. Everybody's already in that age. Now you're called back down. So they had that a couple times, and their first sergeant at the time is a good friend of mine. And so he said, would you come back and talk at the Christmas social? Yeah. So I went back and as I was trying to explain to him, got all done. A bunch of them who were there were all E4s and E3s when I had retired. Now they're all E7s. And I think the nice thing I always heard, or I don't know if it's nice, but the thing I really took to heart was they'd say, you never chewed out anybody in front of anybody, really. Unless everybody knew they really screwed. If a bunch screwed up, you get after them. But you'd always pull people off to the side and talk to them back and say, let's talk for a second. And nobody knew that even they got their butt chewed out. But you could see a change. And so, I tried to take that still in my regular life. And that might be part of the teacher in me or the coach.
Mm-hmm.
You want to praise in public. You want to criticize in private or critique. I don't say it's criticize all the time.
Right.
And I think usually I pull that off. Sometimes I'm sure I still don't. But still trying to get better that way. So, yeah.
Did you ever think that when you were over, especially active duty, that you weren't going to make it back to Montana or North Dakota?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't want to say cockiness, confidence.
Okay.
One of the things that I did, that I've talked about is when we got to Kuwait, I had everybody, Tim McGraw's song, If You're Reading This, everybody knows that one. I ended up having all my guys write their letters to their families. And not a great afternoon. And so everybody write their letters. And I collected all their letters up. A couple guys took a little bit longer, and then I collected them. And I held on to them. And I had them hidden in a spot that only I knew about. And I have one of my best friends in life, Pete Dobitz, who teaches at Dickinson High in Dickinson, North Dakota. Great coach, by the way. And he's a guy I reference a lot when I talk about sacrifices with the family that he had and some of the issues, and he still decided to deploy. And so people would always go, where are the letters at? In case I'm asked, you don't need to worry about it. It's me. Nothing's going to happen to me. And then I ended up having not a life-threatening type thing, but I ended up I had to leave my team for about a week and got sent back to Landstuhl, Germany for a corrective procedure. And that was the worst 7 days of my whole deployment.
Really?
Yeah, because it wasn't with the team, and you don't know. So all the things I told mom, friends, wife, loved ones, don't read the paper, don't look at the news, don't do all that. All I found myself doing for 7 days was doing that. Just sitting there, anxious all the time.
Did that give you a perspective to maybe what they're going through a little?
Yeah, another perspective check. You think, and to know that you gotta, it was.
What was it like? So you didn't have kids, but you had a wife and you had a family back here. What was that like? What kind of communications did you have, and what was that like, do you think, on her, and what was it like on you?
Probably hell on her. On me, tough. But like I said, I had the other 25, so I always go back to that. For my wife, lots of mail and letters. I have some out in the pickup even. I was going to bring them up. That's kind of dorky. I've kept a lot of stuff. I have letters from little kids and former students and staff and journals and all these other things that I did. And, I think it's easier for you when you're deployed because you have that group around you, as I said. For my relationship with her, wrote a lot. We were very fortunate. We could email. Guys had webcams so they could see their kids. One of the things that we were able, you could go to the communications hub, and it would be a room about this big, and there'd be 8 computers set up or 9, so you could get on there. But guys would want to hog the computer thing, and you had 10 minutes, get rolling off because there's other people to talk. Eventually, people use their own laptops and end up buying webcams for $5 and had internet capabilities. And the one thing that was tough was if we had something happen or if there was OPSEC, operational security, you don't want to breach those things. So if something would happen to somebody, very important for us to shut everything down for 48 hours. The last thing anybody needs to know is that their loved one was hurt, injured, or killed, and have somebody unintentionally or intentionally tell their loved one back home, hey, by the way, this guy got hurt today, or this gal. And so trying to shut that down and making sure that you had good control, that was very important. And that happened, unfortunately or fortunately, several times a month. And then you see guys get frustrated, or the internet wouldn't work. That's the thing that always drove me. Oh, the internet, it's slow today. You have internet. Guys, and when we got ready to get deployed, I drove around. I went out a little bit early around North Dakota and went to small little communities. We'd pick up extra equipment we were going to take down to Fort Carson to train with. And I'd meet guys who come in from the Korean War and World War II. I just watched a thing on a Medal of Honor guy the other day, gentleman the other day. Great book that now I have to buy and read, that the commandant or leader down at the Air Force wrote, 10 keys to successful life written by the janitor. He's a Medal of Honor winner. Nobody ever knew as a janitor the way he carried himself and what he taught people. And so as I'm looking at this, these guys, like they said, his family was notified that he was missing in action, and then 2 months later they found out he was a prisoner of war. And so for 2 months they'd already buried him. His dad had actually ended up getting the Medal of Honor posthumously, and this gentleman was alive, but he was a prisoner of war. And so as you look at those stories, I'm thinking, yeah, the internet's slow. The internet's slow.
Right,
really?
Yeah.
Stop complaining. It's, and so those perspective things of how spoiled we were on some things. And I'll tell people, it was 116, 118 years. We also had a little air conditioner that was inside of your, a little sea crate that we lived in, wherever you lived in. Some guys, by the time I got there, we had a little air conditioner. As long as you took care of it and you maintained it and you cleaned out the filter, probably going to be all right. You didn't have cold water, but you had water. And so to know some of the things, like I list, like I said, I read a lot of books on military stuff. I had a school board member once who had told me, you need to read some brain candy every now and then. I'm trying, but I still read a lot of military books, listen to a lot of podcasts. And I'm listening to this one coming in today, and they're talking about how they're trying to get air evac out of Vietnam. And I'm just thinking, for me, we could see everything that we were dealing with a lot of times. I think Afghanistan, the gentlemen and women who served in Afghanistan, I'm just amazed when I go to Red Light and think that it's mountainous and the caverns, everything. That to me, you don't have great optics there all the time. But similarly, I think the guys who served in Vietnam, we were talking, they can't see from here to this mic away in the jungle, but they think I'm nuts because I'll just talk about IEDs casually. And so, that respect that crosses over branches, as much as I'm very proud to be Army and will joke with Navy that, or the other branches, that mutual respect that goes across the lines of everybody who served, I think is so important. And like I said, I think now when we're talking about, not think you're going to get back, all the letters, by the way, to jump back to that other one, was probably some of the coolest moments I ever had is giving each guy's letter when I took him off mission. And my platoon, we didn't have a casualty. We had some guys get hurt, but no casualties. And so be able to give a letter to somebody and watch their emotions that would go through it, say, hey, you're done. You don't have to go out anymore. You just got to sit here and wait until we get out of here in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever the case may be. You got to do missions around the base still to get prepped, but to see the responses by the letters, like I said, I've seen the toughest guys cry. I've seen some tore up the letter, some read it, some burn it. So I don't even know what someone did with it.
That's a cool...
And I still don't know where my letter is. I still have mine.
Do you?
Yeah.
Where is it?
My wife doesn't know I have it, so she'll probably find out now.
Okay.
I figure I'd give it to her on her 20th anniversary.
Great. Well, if she's still listening, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's is that letter a good reminder, or is that why? Do
it's one of my perspective checks.
Okay, I was going to say, why do you keep it? Because some guys burned it, some tore it up, some.
Yeah.
What about you've got 2 daughters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do they feel about dad and military, or what do they know about that?
Not much. They both know I served, and really their first situation to see me military when I retired. But that was in 2009. So I retired before my youngest was born, and my oldest one's 12. Going to be 13 here in a couple days, in about 2 weeks. So, they didn't see a lot. I was blessed. Larry McGovern, gentleman I mentioned earlier, and Frank Hollowell, and some community members actually out of our school raised enough money and sent me on the World War II honor flight, one of them. And so when I got to come back with those heroes, and my daughter, I still have the sign she made, said, welcome home heroes, and that. So they get that. They're very appreciative of military people. But it's, they know the flag. We're going to stand for the flag. I don't get into a lot of those political discussions on it. I always tell everybody, I disapprove of what you say, but I'll defend the death your right to say it. Great quote. I'm a quote guy, and so you want to kneel, hey, but be yourself. But if you're gonna kneel, I just want to know you're doing something about it. Don't be that guy who kneels just for the attention. If you're gonna kneel for it, then I'd expect to see you out there doing something to correct the issues that you think are out there. But I have respect for that then. But if I see you burning the flag, like I always tell our students, I'm gonna also assert my First Amendment privileges, and I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna get the flag back. And then we have some issues we need to keep resolving and keep doing. And that's why I said militarily, like I've tried to tell my girls, you're going to meet all these guys. We went back to reunion, and it was awesome. We went to Medora and had a reunion, and they got to meet a whole bunch of girls who are all about 12, 13. I don't know, not the newest baby boom, but along those lines. But to see everybody, I said, each guy's an individual still. There's going to be guys who absolutely did not think we should be in Iraq. There's going to be some who thought it was the most important thing they've ever done. There's going to be some guys who won't want to talk about it at all. And there's going to be others who will talk all the time. I said, I'm kind of a tweener on almost everything. I don't go out and talk a lot on this anymore. I feel privileged that you're even considering me knowing some of the guys that I know who have talked in here. And to think I'm part of that group's kind of neat. Very neat and quite an honor. But I think they have a healthier appreciation for it. They do notice military people. This last weekend we were flying back from going on a family vacation. They notice the guys in uniforms and ladies in uniform, and we try to thank them every chance we get, or if you get to see them. Also trying to be respectful of their privacy too at times. And so, I think I think they're going to have a healthy appreciation for the sacrifices that people have made, and also should have those same sacrifices when we look at, like I said, man, the people who do. I've learned how to do mount and go into clear buildings and stuff. Guys who are on the police force and firefighters and EMTs and all these other first responders that you get to see do stuff. Their sacrifices daily are pretty impressive.
Is it hard for you to see troops kind of in some cases exactly where you are still years later? Does it bother you to still see us engaged in places like Iraq or Afghanistan?
No, not if we believe that that's. I'm not privy to all the information that some of our higher ups are. General Mattis was there. I have ultimate confidence in former Secretary of Defense
Yep.
Mattis, but I want to trust those individuals. I do think that before we engage in an activity or confrontation, that there needs to be some warranted action for it. So I don't know a lot about the latest situation again with Iran, but if it's deemed that we need to go and there's something that's viable there, yeah, for me, I really thought I was hoping that the thing and the things that are going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, we'd be able to try to blend out of that a little bit with some of it. But when there's evil right in the back pocket of some of those areas and just waiting for you to leave and seeing some of the atrocities that happen to women and children and elders in those communities, I'd rather have them protected, and I don't think there's any people who always step up to do that.
Was there a moment that you remember thinking, oh my gosh, over there, this is how they lived or they were treated? Do you remember something that kind of crystallized it?
Daily,
Okay.
you'd see things that would happen to where children riding in the trunk of cars. Not that that's the most atrocious thing in the world, but along those lines. Just seeing the poverty level and the different areas that can happen and how kids could be influenced. I had a great relationship with kids when we come by. I'd have sunglasses. Didn't realize the value of the American dollar, so they would find stuff for us and they'd turn in and say, "Hey, Umbala, bomb there," and eventually they figured out that we were suckers because American soldiers are good to kid. You look back at everything from Vietnam to
that's
always going to be,
isn't it?
Yep. And so trying to help out with little kids and meeting them and they start taking advantage and knew that they get $1 or $2 or some fake sunglasses or sunglasses from us or pens, pens and pencils. Some of the coolest things I ever did was when we got to go to a school and give out school supplies that were donated by people in North Dakota, and to see how a pencil and a tablet can mean so much to somebody when here we're worried about so many, and myself probably included at times, we're wrapped up into the devices or the latest, greatest, fanciest thing, that there's a lot of people in the world that are just getting by on other things. And again, that perspective check. So I can reference back to those things a lot, and it helps me in a moment where I start thinking, boy, I wish I had this. Well, do you really need it? Do you not need it? Not to say that I don't always still covet the new golf ball or something. If
Right. No, we all do. Yeah.
But you're trying to analyze those things. And
did you? So what's nighttime in Iraq like?
Crystal clear, quiet. Sometimes
Was that
you hope it's quiet?
Yeah. Is that a little like Huntley?
No, clear skies. I remember having clear skies a lot. You'd be able to, I remember still sitting Christmas night being frustrated. 2004 sitting out. It had been raining it rains sometime of the rainy season, and look up, going, oh, that's at the end of it all, and starting to go through some of the things to where, I don't say I was overly religious, but the first couple times go back to Pete, when we'd start having a group every morning. And so you go on mission. We first, coaches, we'd always rally. You rally your team together. Hey, let's team break. Started doing a team break. Well, there's only about 2 or 3 guys that would ever come into the team break for about the first couple days. Myself, Pete, and then a gentleman who's actually a sheriff in Beach, North Dakota now. And so us 3 be there. And eventually, a couple more. Well, after we had a couple things happen, all of a sudden, everybody every time. And Pete would always do a prayer, something along those lines. And so we started falling back on Psalm 91 a lot. Now, actually, I have it, even as a high school principal and teacher, I have a wall in my office. If you're ever around Huntley, swing in. I'll talk about one of the coolest things we do that's better than almost anybody else in the state one time a year. I got a wall up in my office, and I have that hung up in there, and people say, well, it's like, I don't force anybody. It's just there. It's a reminder. And I bought one for all my platoon, and everybody signed it, and that was kind of like their Christmas gift. And it was because Pete had started bringing that in all the time. And so those things are there. But I'll have people come in and look in the office. So I'll swing by, and on Veterans Day every year we do this awesome parade, and I wish I could take more credit for it. I've helped kind of continue it on, but for over 40 some years we've been doing a parade out at Huntley Project in respect to Veterans Day, and you see every student in fifth grade and sometimes sixth, everybody has a flag. And VFW, we show up, we do a little part of it, but it's really the students and the music teachers who have done that, and the elementary teachers who have carried on that tradition for over 40 years. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
You have to swing out sometimes.
Was going on patrol at night in Iraq hard?
Yeah, in some aspects, because the nod, you get to use nods now, night vision scopes, so that was good. Some of the things that would end up happening are you can see where you're getting fired upon from easier.
Right.
With tracers. Of course, tracers are all the same, kind of the same color now. It used to be difference from listening back on Vietnam guys, a little different color tracers, different areas. And the concern of not being able to see the IEDs as well. Now you really have to rely on seeing a glint of a wire, or seeing a light off of maybe a remote controlled IED, like off of or a cell phone.
Right.
So you're looking for more of those things, or turned up dirt. So it's more difficult when you're looking for IEDs. And so what we would do is we'd leave and we'd drive at about 4 to 5 miles an hour. And so if we left Warden, like I try to tell students, it'd be like going to Laurel and back every day. And we're going to just keep on searching the roads and keep on doing that for about 8 to 10 to 12 hours, unless we found something that could turn into 16 or 20, or might be earlier, depending upon if, you get blown up and you lose your buffalo, which happened to us several times. Then you get troops back, and you got to get that equipment off the road, because you don't want to leave any critical assets. And so at nighttime, probably that stress level a little bit more for guys, but having night vision scopes helps. But listen a little bit more along those lines. And so what we did is we developed a rotation to where we'd send one platoon out at night for a week, then they'd rotate off and they'd do fob security for a week, and then they'd do daytime. Because when we first started doing it, there was like one group's going out at night all the time, and everybody's like, I don't want night missions all the time. This is
right.
It's like, well, you got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. Who's going to do it? And so building that rotation company-wide really helped out to alleviate a little bit of that stress, and giving guys a week to where now they're on fob security, which for us wasn't as bad. We didn't get mortared nearly as much as the LSA that was just north of us, or actually to the north and west, a little bit more by Baghdad. They get mortared all the time because their light noise discipline was not very good. They had bigger units, and it was a massive air base. And for us, we just sit there, and they might drive by and lob a mortar in every now and then out of the back of their, lob one in, basically hoping they're going to hit something. But we were pretty spread out, and tactical wise had light and noise discipline, so they could do some stuff. So
you were also over in Korea.
Yes.
And that the peninsula right now is still pretty tight. What are you, having been over in Korea and also in Korea recently, when you see news about Korea and the tensions of North Korea, do you see that differently than probably I do because you've been over there, or what do you make of that?
No, I think the tensions are pretty realistic the whole time there. Okay. You know what it's going to be like. We didn't get to go to the DMZ or anything like that along those lines, but I guess when you notice it a lot is you see all the equipment that's just sitting there waiting for if.
Right, right. So that's a little unnerving.
It's an awareness getter. It's an attention getter. It's like, holy cow, I didn't realize, even being in the military, and I haven't been there. I was there in, it's been 15, 16 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, what are we in now? 29? Yeah, it's even before then. It was before we deploy. And so about 2001. And so started seeing some opportunities that way. But, that's something that you notice.
Yeah.
And there's anxiousness there for obvious reasons. Italy didn't notice that as much.
Sure.
It's a lot more relaxed culture.
Italy is a good.
Yeah, Italy was not a bad experience. That was. It's like I said, militarily, I've been afforded a lot of great opportunities to be in places that I would have never dreamed I would ever had a chance to do.
Does how was going from active duty back into a classroom? How did you do that? Was that hard?
Subbing wise, I didn't enjoy as much. Getting back in the classroom the next year, I didn't think it was too hard. I probably have to ask students. I always tell everybody, you got to ask my wife if I've changed. She knew me before I left, or my friends. That's what we always try to tell families and members. That very rarely, and it goes back to the thing I was talking about before, we ever admit that hey, I'm having issues, I have this and that. So we talk to families a lot, and wives and children. Hey, if you know something with dad, or husbands, hey, you know something with mom or your wife, give us a little insight. And that was something we tried to start picking up a little bit better on. In terms of me, I guess I try to evaluate this way. I was blessed by having very strong people around me, blessed by having a great school district around me, or employer. I guess anybody who has a great employer. Got some faith, so that didn't hurt me.
Yeah.
And I knew, I don't want to say I could switch trigger on and off, because I don't think anybody really truly can do that. But I knew when I got to the point to where I was going to get deployed, and I knew what the mission was going to be, and knew what the consequences or the actions could be of that. And it came to kind of my own agreement with myself to know where we're going to be. And then when you get back, it's time to try to transition back again. Mm-hmm. And so, I think I've done that fairly well. But again, there's somebody out there who probably tell you, no, he didn't. He hasn't. But
if your wife were sitting in that chair, mm-hmm. and I asked her, in what ways do you think Mark has changed, other than, if you did it over 20 years, and anybody's going to change over 20 years, but in what ways do you think she would say that your experience changed you?
I'm not sure. I'm really not.
All right.
Hopefully since I've got out of 2000, hopefully over the last 10 years, I've gotten a lot better as a husband.
Okay.
Militarily wise, I don't think, like I said, I don't think I balanced that very well. Now that I can look back, at the time I thought I was just kicking butt and taking names, and I was doing all these great things, and and I was getting opportunities that when I was in Iraq, I had a chance to re-up or get out, and I told her I wanted to re-up, and she goes, I don't, not real excited when you're in the middle of Iraq, saying, hey, I can sign up for another 6 years, and at that point she said, yeah, but you're going to retire on your 20-year anniversary. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. As the 20-year anniversary was getting closer, I'd become a first sergeant in the North Dakota Guard, and was getting an opportunity. They'd talked to me a little bit about going to take over another group, and I just said, I'll just stay in Dickinson. And then sergeant major opportunity was coming up. And to do a sergeant major opportunity or role is, to me, at least a 5-year commitment. And that was going to be probably about year 19. And I already knew. I was like, no, I made a commitment. So I finally held to a good commitment that way with my wife's 20-year anniversary. She showed up. I was in formation. She stood off to the side. I retired. And I think since then I've probably been a better husband. At least I hope I have been, hopefully. And trying to balance some of those things. Work-wise, I still don't balance it all great all the time. I'm trying to get better, like I said. But I'm not trying to balance the military and work and family.
Yeah.
And so that's been a little better.
So tell me, how has your time in the military helped you as an educator and an administrator?
I think to stay calm in crisis helps. I think that I understand more it's about relationships than anything else. Probably, it's like, no, here's the standard we got to meet. Well, to get somebody to meet the standard, you better have a relationship with them. They got to know you care, and it's got to be genuine, and it can't be just that one day you're going to show them you care. You got to build that trust, and you got to build that connectiveness with people. And whether I do that well or not, I'm not sure. I know that I'll have people say, boy, I was really good at doing this. I feel very blessed, again, to be in that community, because I think of the support that I've had. At the same point, it's got to be reciprocated on both sides. And so, as a military person, you understand what the standard has to be. There's lots of different ways to get to that standard to get it accomplished.
Yeah.
The bypass route, the clearest line is always not the most effective line to me. Being an engineer, sometimes the clearest line can have lots and lots of issues to go on with it. There's a reason why it's so simple. And so you got to be able to evaluate whether the simple plan is the best plan or a little bit more of a complex plan. And I think also being around some great teachers and coaches and military leaders, that's kind of the thing they'd always say too is, sometimes you're not going to get what you want isn't always what you're going to get. So how do you balance that off? And as a teacher and educator, we always expect that kid to love how can nobody love history to me?
Right, yeah.
How can nobody love being in a weight classroom? I don't get it. But it's not for everybody. So understanding that we each have our own perspectives and obligations to try to make at least connect a little bit. Boy, I would hope that when I'm done doing presentations in a classroom, and I'll go in, like I said, once a year and say, hey, here's what I did. And I'll just kind of open-end it now. I got little videos. Everybody wants to see the videos of stuff blowing up. I'm good. I like doing Demolition was fun.
Yeah.
I like doing C4, like blowing things up.
Sure,
Don't get to do that every day anymore.
No, that's true.
And so not much of an applicability in life on that. But, that's what people want to see. And never anything where it's hurting anybody. But, here's another tree. There we're kicking a tree stump this way. Or that's an IED that we blew up or something along those lines. So those are good things. But I think a lot of it that I always try to reflect back on is the respect and learning from our past, and then I do also try to leave it a lot with it that, for us these days, at least for myself, I feel uncomfortable. You get a free thing here, you can have a free thing there, and if you just sign up for this, there's all these rewards when you go through this restaurant will give you this on Veterans Day. I appreciate that they're doing that now. I think a lot of times we're given a lot of attention, which I think is a little uncomfortable, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
For me, probably the first time I noticed that when I got back from Iraq, I flew into Billings and the school, and bless them, they did a nice job. But I come off top of they let my wife come back, broke price security protocols, let me talk to her, and I come up to the top stairs, and there's just this mass of people, which was really good, but also very anxious right away. I don't know how I pulled that off. I've never watched the interview of that night because I'm like, yeah. It's like, oh, this is great to see everybody, but trying to let people have that time frame to where they can blend it. I think that's something I appreciate as an educator and a teacher, that there's sometimes where you need to talk to somebody right away, and sometimes people need a little time, and then you can balance that out.
So you lead a school district.
I do, yeah.
How did your time in the military prepare you for superintendent, or is there any crossover there, do you think?
I think there's some crossover. It's helped out.
Yeah.
Dealing in the military, as I said, there's all sorts of different people. In a school district, there's all sorts of different people. So really I'm in charge of, or I don't even know if I'm in charge. I would say I work with 12 to 13 managers or different principals and leaders in our school district more often than I get to work with everybody else. But you're still impacting everybody's life. So you have, out of those three, you have 13 different persons. I'm sure newspaper reporters probably have 15 different personalities, and somebody has to work with them. Editor has to work with them. And so I think that that's helped me in those aspects to be able to blend it and work with them. The thing that I don't think it did a very good job of, and that's just a personal trait of mine, usually people in the military delegate very well. I'm not a very good delegator.
Okay.
And I'm still working on that. But, that's one area to where, having to be away or having to go away for a week or so, it's a good opportunity because everybody always steps up. And I think that's kind of where I'd probably take the most pride is whenever have been gone or had to do something, some bigs come up, people have been able to pull it off to the standard that I would still hope that we would do. And a lot of that falls back on respecting others. And that's where I brought in this sheet that I always give this to kids whenever I talk on military stuff. And it's basically just the speech by Tecumseh. You can have that one. I brought one in. Sorry, I folded it all up. But it's have respect for others, but still hold on to your own values. You don't give up who you are when you try to respect somebody else. I think the one thing I think military taught me more than anything else, there's a time to fight for what you really believe in, but there's a lot of times to where at the other side of the avenue might have some really good information to share. And I don't think we listen to that very well anymore right now. I think we're on two sides of discussions a lot, and it's right and wrong. And we got to find a way to compromise a little bit more. And I think the military taught me that very well. When we were in Iraq, there were some things we had to compromise out and figure out when we were talking to locals on, boy, they're just wanting some water to be brought in. That should be easy for us to pull off. Or probably one of the big things that everybody taught me in the military is if you tell somebody you're going to do something, you need to do it. Yeah. Don't promise something you can't pull off. Because when you're in a foreign country and you tell somebody, hey, we're going to make sure we get that irrigation canal dug for you the right way, or hey, we're going to make sure that this road is 100% safe. The first time that doesn't happen, you've broken trust. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what the military has really taught me, probably more than anything else. Say what you're going to do, but then pull it off to the best of your ability. And don't overextend yourself if you can't pull it off.
Yeah.
Because you're going to end up disappointing yourself, disappointing everybody else. And then it also, and in my terms, basically makes the Army look bad, or at this point it might make Huntley Project look bad, and that community and that school or that branch of the service doesn't deserve that because of the inactions or ineffectiveness of one person who just wrote a check that
that they couldn't catch.
Yeah, you can't cash.
Do you miss being in the military?
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you miss most?
Sorry, I took too long to answer.
No.
I miss the camaraderie. I miss the team component of it. And I've got a great team at home, like I said, but there's something very unique to working on a common goal with the intensity that it can sometimes draw you to have to be a part of. I miss being around a bunch of the same guys. Mm-hmm. And we're all old now, so we probably wouldn't be very good at anything we do. But it would be, it's awesome to visit with them.
Do you recommend military for students, for any of your students?
No. I get asked. I talk to a lot of students. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty honest with everybody. I always tell them don't sign up because you want college money, because it's not a time frame anymore to where it's going to be, well, maybe you get deployed. It's going to be when you're going to get deployed. And so I'll tell them this. I'm pretty honest. Your recruiters they need you, and that's good. They should want you. Join the military if you have a love of passion for country, if you know what you're getting yourself into, and make sure you talk to your mom or dad. All the things I didn't do.
I was going to say, this sounds like the voice of experience.
Had to learn from a little bit of my mistakes. But like I told them, if they want to serve, I'm absolutely supportive of it. And I always tell students, when I do a presentation, it's not pro-military or anti-military. The military is, you need to be fully invested in that to where you can pull it off and do the best of that job that you need to do, because your life and others' lives depend on it. There's very few other jobs along those lines. And so if you're going to do it, you better be invested. You got to know what's a 6-year commitment or a 3-year commitment, and know there's going to be some sacrifices. It's going to mean, for me it was, might not be able to go to this football game, might not be able to do this. And so trying to balance those things out. But I try to be very realistic with them on it. And if they want to join, great. And I tell them, if you don't want to join, at the end of this, I've had students tell me, I just don't think the military's, I don't think it's very a positive environment. I go, hey, it's your opinion. That's great. I'm telling you that I've met so many people. It's been a great positive experience for me. And don't shortchange it. But at the same point, if you don't want to join, absolutely don't join, because being a first sergeant and platoon sergeant, last thing I ever wanted to deal with was that guy, we got deployed, who was saying, and my guys are pretty good. They knew me a long time, so they probably thought it, but they wouldn't say it around me. But there was a gentleman that was, the group that was replacing us had a gentleman from Ohio, and I come up to the top of a security position to see why there had been a misfire. And he goes, why? I was working at this place 3 months ago, and I don't even want to be here. I go, there's not a lot of people who covet being here, but you're here, so you better get your stuff together, for lack of better terms. And I don't want that to be on a leader. They shouldn't have to take in people that they got to babysit.
Yep.
Now, as a high school principal, I say we babysit. That's our job. It's a whole different perspective, and we don't fire high school students. We hope not to. In the military, there needs to be some guys who are kicked out. They don't hold the honor, the integrity, the trust, the loyalty, the duty, the respect, all those things. So those individuals need to be out. And that was part of the good and the bad of being deployed. When we got back, we had a lot of guys who had been great National Guard soldiers who got out. And I think in the end, it made us better. And that's not a critique of them.
No.
But, the shift had happened. It wasn't the 1994 company picnic party, have fun, go for your 2 weeks and do those things. The shift had happened, and for the better. For the better of the respect for the Guard, the better of the respect. The Guard's been deployed lots of times. I can go all the way back. I've got a print that they gave me when I retired too, the Spanish-American War, and a famous group from North Dakota crossing the bridge that they'd lit on fire. The enemy had lit on fire, and those guys are still crossing it. That's 1890. So there's been Guard deployed since, I don't know, Revolutionary War. Everybody knows that. But I think we got in this mindset of what the Guard is or what it was, and that was my whole thing when we were deployed, is I wanted to make sure people understood that we were capable, effective, good, solid, and professional. Mm-hmm. And I think our group did a very good job of that.
Do you have a favorite memory of your time in the Guard or deployed?
Boy, I have lots of great memories of the Guard. Giving the letters back to the guys is always a positive one that I can come back to. Going to the schools to hand out stuff, that was awesome. Getting off the plane and seeing guys be able to do that, and seeing the family reunion type thing when we got back. I have tons of positive memories.
What did you miss the most
when
you were away?
Wife.
Right.
I mean, loved the closeness that way. We'd only been married a short time. I got married in 2002. I leave in 2003. So actually, by the time I got back, I'd been gone more than I'd been home when we were married. Mm. And so to know that we're stronger now today than we were even 6 months ago. And so, to see that through and know that was probably easily the best decision I've ever made. Mm-hmm. So that's been probably the best thing along those lines. But yeah, I'm missing, I love mowing my grass now. I think almost everybody I talk to that deploy, everybody loves to mow their grass. Maybe it's because we're just older now and old men take care of their yards. But, there's something about being able to do that and having the freedom to go somewhere. And I've always appreciated the freedoms we've had. I think even more so now because of, when I drive down the road, I said, you drive 3-4 miles an hour down the road looking for stuff all day. It does affect you some. I guess probably the easiest one I could share that was effective, and I'm probably going on way too long for you. As my wife came down to pick me up in Denver, I got sent back and I was trying to figure out how to get back to Iraq. And not going to a lot of stories, I ended up having a surgery before I got deployed, and there was a couple complications. So they sent me back, said, "Oh, you're going to be stuck here." I go, "Give me a chance." Came back up, met with the surgeon I knew here in Billings, and he got me squared away within about a day, figured out what was wrong. So I can go back. But anyways, my wife picks me up in Denver, and I get a drive. And we're going down the interstate out of Denver, and she finally pull over, let me drive. Because I was driving, I think, like 20, and feeling like I was going fast, 20, 25, and there's cars just flying by. And so your perspective changes that way, too.
Sure, because you're used to looking for things on the side of the road.
I'm looking all the time. And and I still know, I'll look when I drive, but I never, when I see a garbage bag alongside the road or a deer, an antelope, or a skunk, I'm never thinking, not intentionally, I don't think ever pops my head. I'm sure some part of my brain probably goes, hey, I notice it, but that's, I don't think I'm affected driving that way. Right. But I know the first time I was back, obviously it
driving 20 miles an hour.
Pull over, I need to drive. So and everybody gets their time frames back there. So I have tons of positive memories. Yeah. Have a couple bad, not bad, horrible. Obviously, Cody being killed, that sucks as a memory because of a young man who had such a bright future, and knowing others who got hurt or killed or anything along those lines. But I think that's part of it too, that I'm more appreciative of their sacrifices and always show respect that way whenever I get a chance. So, and I think that's probably the better way for me to try to, I don't talk a lot about military with my daughters, but my appreciation for others, if I can show that to them, I think that's a much longer life lesson for them to understand than what Dad did. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Well, I just want to say thank you for what you did. Thanks for being willing to do that. And also thank you for being an educator and being a positive role model, because I think that's also both very noble callings. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Yeah. No, it is. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. This has been Daryl Ehrlich and Mark Wandle with Stories of Honor. Thanks.